Hello and welcome to this edition of the Native News Update. I'm your host for today, Kimberly Acosta. Many of the stories viewed here can be found at our websites, IndianCountryNews.com or IndianCountryTV.com. And here is the news for the day from the Associated Press and other Native news sources. Reflecting on 50 years of service, Wasco Chief Nelson Walulatum has reached a remarkable milestone in his career of tribal government. May 23rd marked his 50th anniversary of chieftainship for the Confederated tribes of Warm Springs. He joined the Tribal Council a week after becoming chief on June 2, 1959. Chief Walulatum, a descendant of Chief Billy Chinook, has been a tribal leader during the major events that have shaped the current Confederated tribes of the Warm Springs. Before becoming chief, he served in the Navy from 1943 to 1946. Through the years serving his tribe, he has kept tribal sovereignty at the forefront of his priorities. And now, almost 84, he still carries a copy of the tribal constitution and bylaws with him at all times and refers to them often. A community policing project helped identify a young deaf-mute man from Pendleton, Oregon. The Umatilla Tribal Police are hoping that a new sign donated by Julie Humphreys of Birch Creek Trophies in Pilot Rock and a new cart donated by Jim Naughton of Zimmerman's Hardware in Pendleton will better identify Zeke Gutierrez and persuade cautious residents to no longer fear the young deaf-mute man who collects cans and bottles on the Umatilla Reservation. The project was led by Senior Officer David Williams and Officers James Gurley and Rowan Hayes. The effort was prompted by numerous calls to the tribal police from residents who thought Gutierrez was a possible burglar who wouldn't listen to their pleas to get off their land. Tribal police say Gutierrez routinely walks 20 or more miles a day before he received the cart. He was toting big garbage bags full of cans up and down the road. He had 4 bags and would grab 2 and carry them 100 yards, go back and get the other 2, bring them down, then repeat the up and down the highway. He was literally doubling his mileage shuttling bags down the road. We applaud his ingenuity. This is what he does for a living, Williams said. I'd just like to take some time now and highlight some of our elders who have passed away around Indian country. From Warm Springs, Tribal Elder Chesley Yatin Sr., a highly decorated Korean War veteran, passed away on June 8th at the age of 78. Mr. Yatin was an ambulance driver during the Korean War, and he was wounded during combat on December 7, 1950, getting hit in his right thigh, a wound that would hurt for the rest of his life. He was then wounded a second time by a shrapnel on June 2, 1951, when his unit was hit by a mortar attack. He stayed stationed in Korea until 1954, then was sent back to the U.S., where he was stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington. After coming back from Korea and having been through so much combat and witnessing so many people dying, Mr. Yatin suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, which at the time was an undiagnosed ailment. Mr. Yatin then left Fort Lewis and went back to the reservation, and as a result the military dishonorably discharged him. But years later, the Oregonian published an article detailing the circumstances of his discharge, and war veteran advocates, including U.S. Senator Ron Wyden, then petitioned the Army to address the injustice of the situation. In 2005, the Army reversed their earlier decision, and Mr. Yatin received an honorable discharge, and he finally received the medals he had earned in Korea, which include a Korean campaign ribbon with 5 battle stars, a Korean Defense Medal, and certificates honoring his 2 Purple Hearts. Not only was Mr. Yatin an honored war veteran, but he was also a husband and a father of 13 children and many grandchildren and great-grandchildren. The White Earth spiritual advisor George Joe Bush Fairbanks Sr. passed away on May 26th. Fairbanks, whose Anishinaabe name was Miskobaneshi, which means strong thunderbird, was another Korean War veteran. In 1951, he joined the Navy for 6 years and was then honorably discharged with many various medals. He was also a certified electrician and a culinary specialist. Mr. Fairbanks was of the Odog clan and became a spiritual advisor to the White Earth Ojibwe tribe. Him and his second wife, Margaret Norcross, traveled around the world, going to powwows and helping his people. He has spent the last 35 years with his adopted family, 6 stepchildren, 3 adopted sons, and 31 grandchildren and great-grandchildren. The Lummi Nation mourns the passing of honored elder Earl Thomas. Mr. Thomas was an award-winning sidewalk salesperson from the Bellingham Herald. After graduating high school, he joined the Air Force and served in World War II as a waist gunner in the B-17 bomber among the 390th Bombing Group, 570th Bomber Squadron. His plane was shot down during a mission over Munich, Germany. He was interred as a prisoner of war after his crew successfully crash-landed in Switzerland. He met and fell in love and married Teresa Mary Hilaire on September 9, 1945. Together they had 10 children, 40 grandchildren, 48 great-grandchildren, and 1 great-great-grandchild. He devoted his life to the Lummi community, including the Lummi Indian Business Council. He also helped start the Stammish Water Carnival, where he became known as the voice of the Lummi Stammish, a Lummi word meaning old warrior, in honor of the veterans returning from World War II. Navajo code talker Willie K Bagay passed away June 1st from cancer. He was the 3rd code talker to pass away within a 3-week time period. The others were John Brown Jr. and Thomas Claw. To the rest of the world, he was a hero, but in the tiny mountain hamlet he called home, he was the guy who loved Madlock reruns, commodity cheese, and juicy fruit chewing gum. Mr. Bagay witnessed the iconic flag raising at Iwo Jima. He served with the 3rd Marine Division and was overseas for 11 months. In 2001, he received a Congressional Silver Medal in recognition of his service as a Navajo code talker. He was of the Bitter Water clan, born of the yucca fruit. Mr. Bagay was married twice and had 8 children and many grandchildren. He chose a quiet life after his service as a code talker, working at the Pinion Mercantile from 1946 until his retirement in 1982. He also ran a herd of sheep and watched his many children grow up. And Thomas Bearheart Sweeney, a member of the Flathead Reservation, passed away at the end of May from a long battle with cancer. He served in the Air Force during the Korean conflict from 1950 to 1954. His greatest legacies were that of protecting and preserving the natural resources of the Flathead Reservation. He also served 2 terms on the Tribal Council, including a stint as tribal chairman. Bearhead left a lasting legacy not only on his reservation but in Indian country nationwide. His most recent stand began in 2005 when he began to make crosses at his home along Highway 93 at Post Creek as a way to protest the war in Iraq. He didn't like war, any war, especially the Iraq War. The crosses and anti-war rallies was his way of making his statement. The crosses stand on his property along Highway 93. The red ones are for the Indians killed in the war, the pink ones are for the women killed, and the rest represent the others killed in the war. And that is the latest roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. We'd like to thank our underwriters for helping us with this broadcast and look forward to seeing you again. Thank you and have a grand day.